Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnley. This is another Worcestershire church. This is the Church of St Leonard, Broughton, Hackett. It's a great example of a teeny tiny single cell building. Although it's only created as a parish in the 16th century, it was a chapelry before then. The first record of a church here, or of a minister here, a priest, is in 1274. And so there was a building here then. There are some traces in the current structure, the west window in particular, of 14th century work, maybe late 13th, which again would fit with the date of the first known priest. But it's a very simple building, and it might be any date from the 12th century through to the 17th century, given its style. It's a charming example of the very smallest type of English parish church. There are smaller buildings than this, of course, but the type itself, just one room, one space, with no chancel arch. You can see the beam up there that indicates the break between the nave and the chancel. So have a look around and see what we can see in this charming, simple little building. Well, of course, we start at the west end as usual. There has been a significant Victorian restoration here, and the pews are from that date. Before then, I expect you would have had box pews and some benches and a high pulpit, and it's had the pulpit and a new pulpit, which is lower. The font also appears to be 19th century. This appears to be fairly early 19th century. It certainly is nothing terribly grand about it, is there? It's a very simple font. Simple bowl there. South doorway only. We have here the benefaction board. Benefaction boards are boards that record gifts that are given for charitable purposes to the parish. And the war memorial there, very simple. You've got there's a couple of hymn boards of different dates. Pulpit, obviously, is Victorian. Pews maybe even later than that, but there's nothing terribly special about the pews. Pulpit is a fairly substantial piece with a nice brass handrail. There is a slight distinction between nave and chancel, this little bit up there. East window, Christ as priest, I am with you always. Obviously you can see the chalice and wafer, and then you've got the symbols of the grain and the grapes for the bread and the wine. Someone has carefully done a lace version of the Lord's Prayer there. There's no sedilia, piscina, just very simple structure, and that window is 1970. Is quite good for the 1970s. The last gasp of proper figurative glass. You can see that's the boxed-in vestry at the back. There's no separate vestry structure. The little electric organ there, square-headed window. Just 4 windows in the entire building, 1 in each wall. And this square-headed window has a bit of tracery in, and the one on the other side has no tracery, just got this simple mullion down the middle. It's typical of the 17th century. And just a couple of memorials. And that really is all inside. See, there's only 2 bells, a ding and a dong, as they say. And there's that organ at the back. Not a lot to see because it's such a tiny, tiny building. So we go outside and walk easily around the outside. Again, you have here that there's a belfry, and of course those 2 beams and that plaster section there, that's where the belfry supports are. The belfry supports are from those beams. There's no internal structure as sometimes you will find. So let's go outside then. And so here we are outside at Broughton, Hackett. Again, you see how tiny the building is. You've got this little porch, and it's been quite significantly restored in the Victorian, probably because it was falling down at the time. But it still very much reflects this medieval, tiny single cell structure that it was when built. So we'll have a look around the outside and point out the salient features of this tiny building. And so here we are outside at Broughton Hackett. You can see here, there's that 14th century window. It does look 14th century on the outside. Harder to tell on the inside, but the tracery is more early 14th than late 13th. Nice belfry, wooden with shingled roof. The roofs of the church and porch, those are simple clay tiles. It really is a lovely little tiny building. With that window and such like, yes, the west wall appears to be the largely medieval material. You can just see that buttress there. That is some Victorian stuff, probably absolutely necessary to keep the building standing properly. That is the north wall. Also, the south wall appears to have been rebuilt in the Victorian era. There's some evidence there might have been a door underneath that window, or an opening of some kind. It could be a bit odd, but odd things happen. And then this wall again is, well, pre-Victorian, but that looks like a 17th century top to that door, although the lower part, and the lintel is post-medieval, but the lower part looks like it might even be Norman, and someone has taken a tympanum out above there at some point. That is a 17th century window. And you can see that the chancel is a separate structure that has been added to the original chapel. So the original chapel would have been just the nave, and it would have been absolutely tiny. It's quite probable that when the church was elevated to the status of a parish church rather than being a chapel within a larger parish, that this was then added, because that east window is Victorian, so it tells us nothing about the date of the east end. But we know that it becomes a parish in the 16th century, so that may have been added then. Certainly it's been added at some point, and the original chapel would have been just the nave. Really tiny. It's one of a number of, there's 3 of these small churches in a line, and then there's Himbleton. It's only about half a mile between each of them. One of them is redundant, and we'll see why when we get there, which is there's no village there. So here is the east end, and no buttress on the corner here. And because this wall has been rebuilt in the 19th century, you can't see that join between the nave and chancel on the south side. And that window, although it's square-headed, at least the top end is Victorian. The lower bit is early, and that would then originally have been a simple square-headed window like the one on the north side. Here we have the porch, which again is 19th century. Undoubtedly, the repair work had to be done, and we have here in the porch there's a memorial to the men of the parish who served in the Great War. So that is Broughton Hackett. Tiny building here. And so that's St Leonard's, Broughton Hackett. Historic churches come in all shapes and sizes. In this case, shape, box, size, tiny. And you imagine it's would originally have been a good 1/3 smaller than it is today. Of course, the village was smaller then as well. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.